and Chats. My name is Lindsay Giese, and I'm the Executive Director for River Arts, Inc. And today I'm joined with,
We are connected.
I'm joined by
At the head.
Matt Endres, Stockbridge alum Matt Endres. Hi, Matt.
Good morning. Hello, Lindsay.
Good morning. So, yeah, got to take a sip, get going.
That's how you start these, right?
This is coffee, I promise. Well, I don't know if you saw some of our posts from our previous coffee chats, but we started quite the discussion, and Matt was nominated to be one of our coffee chat guests, and I'm so glad that he was, because I'm really excited to get the answers to some of these questions that I have been wanting to know my whole life.
Oh, okay.
Because Matt and I went to high school together. So
That's right.
I have so many questions. I'm just going to dive in. I hope you're ready.
Cool. Yeah.
But I do want to start with, if you could please explain your background a little bit.
My background, well, I graduated in 04 from Stockbridge High School, and you graduated from 03, so we spent 3 years in high school together. And
yeah, just to like point out that I'm older than you.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're older than me. And I was involved in all the different musical opportunities, the show choir, marching band, choir, things like that. And then went on to my undergraduate degree in jazz studies, drum set performance at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. And then went on to get my master's and my doctorate at the University of Illinois in drum set performance and ethnomusicology.
And you're a doctor.
I'm a doctor now, as of a couple months ago. It's been a long time. Yeah.
That's crazy. Don't take offense to this, but
Oh.
in high school, I don't know if I would have thought you'd be a doctor someday.
Every single one of my friends said that to me, so I do not take offense to it, and I didn't either. So,
if anything, you should be like, "Booyah, did it!"
Yep, exactly, pretty much. No, I totally agree with everyone who said that. I never thought that.
Congratulations, that's amazing.
Well, thank you.
Really impressive.
Thank you.
We'll have to celebrate sometime.
Yes, absolutely, we will, definitely.
Okay. So, when did you first realize that drumming was it for you? Like that was the thing you needed to do? I mean, I know you're teaching now, but like drumming is your passion, right?
Yeah. Well, I remember I'll answer that a little differently, because I remember the first time that I actually played with human beings and was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I only knew like a couple grooves, and I was playing for a little while, and that was our first band rehearsal with Denny Kahn, Greg Lorenz. We were the show band for Middle Level Motion, and we were playing, and Greg was playing bass, and Denny was playing piano, and we went through the rehearsal, and I was like, wow, like playing with human beings, like that was the first time I was like, I want to do this all the time. But the first time I realized that like drumming was the thing, I learned pretty early on, probably my freshman year in high school, just because coming in, and then the first thing you do is marching band, right? When you come in as a freshman, and the summer before freshman year, being on the drum line, and Sue Holloway giving me opportunities to play. And like right away, like I knew, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a forever thing. I didn't know necessarily what, but as high school went on, I knew like, yeah, I'm going to go to school for music. I just want to play, and I want to play for a living.
How do you think your parents felt about drums?
I've heard that from so many adults, like serving through graduate school and talking to tables, like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm a music major. They're like, oh, okay. So what do you do? What are you even going to do with that? And my parents never once, not at all, ever said anything to me that would maybe reference them being worried or anything. All they ever did the entire time was support my decisions for it. Absolutely. All the way through.
They're pretty awesome people.
They are.
I was actually more like referring to like how loud practicing drumming could be. Yeah.
No, I mean, my dad, was mostly working when I would be playing, but when my mom was home, she would always tell me that, she'd flash the basement light being like, okay, this is enough, because a young drummer like myself, I was beating the crap out of him. And she said the pictures on the wall would start like that. And she was like, okay. And if you know my mom, what you do, she wouldn't like that if something fell. We'll just say that.
Did you ever dabble in any other instruments?
No. I mean, in my undergrad, I did like first 2 years of my undergrad, I did like some percussion, like four mallet, marimba, and stuff like that. And I was just horrible at it. And I didn't really enjoy playing that stuff. But I pretty much always, I remember early on being like, if I'm going to practice something, I'm going to practice drum set because that's the thing I care about. I'm going to want to spend the most time on that instrument as opposed to like, timpani or, the whole percussion world, because they really are somewhat different, the percussion world and the drum set world. So I just, not really. I mean, I did play some of that stuff, but I just didn't enjoy it.
I know you very well from just being involved in lots of show choir things together, but really good friends with your sister, Lindy.
Yep.
Hi, Lindy. I'm sure she'll watch this.
Yeah.
And so Lindy and I are the same age. You're younger. What was it like having a sibling so close in age and then both being involved in similar things? Was it awesome, or was it really tough, or?
I was always, always the annoying brother. Always. And I was. But, through high school, like I think most people are with their siblings who are close in age, they argue that, things like that. And it wasn't, we always got along, but it wasn't hard. I always looked up to Lindy, especially in high school, being in show choir and things like that. And I've always wanted to be like around her, even though, I would be annoying purposely a lot of the times and naturally, but it wasn't hard. I remember when Lindy first went to college and I was a senior still, that's when our relationship really like blossomed because she was away, and I went to visit her the first time and it was awesome.
So you choose to be together as opposed to being forced to be together.
Right, exactly. Right. But no, it wasn't hard. It was, I remember, because I was always behind everybody, right? Because I was in the band. So I was always behind all of you, and I'd be able to see, you and my sister and everybody, singing and dancing, things like that. And I always looked up to her a lot because, But, and she actually drummed first. She was a drum set player, if you remember.
Yeah.
She was a singer dancer through Middle Level Motion, but I think did she play drum set one year? I don't remember, but she played and she was a great player.
She did 7th grade maybe.
Yeah, something like that. And I remember like that was like, oh my gosh, she's really good, and I wanted to be like her,
Yeah,
but I'm better than her now, so. At drum set, I'm saying.
You would argue. And she's so proud of you too.
Yeah.
So drumming, so you fell in love with drumming. When did jazz come into play? Like, how did you make that leap?
That was a big leap. I always played, Mudvayne, Slipknot, cover band stuff in high school. And I never really dove into that world. And when I was in my undergrad, that was, if you played drum set, those were the ensembles, and really at a lot of schools, except for like Berkeley or some other schools that offer like commercial music programs, you play jazz. You're in the big band, you're in combos or small groups, things like that. And I remember getting to school and hearing all these older drum set majors. And I wasn't a drum set major at first. I was a percussion major because I didn't know that kind of drum set playing. But hearing them and really realizing that, a lot of people have this view of jazz as, oh yeah, it's just kind of like this, right? It's kind of like, it's old, right? Right, yeah. You just say weird things with your mouth, right? That's what it is. Once I really started to realize that this music, really the only pure American music, is once I learned the deeper values of what this music is and how hard it is. It's not going to, right? There's a lot more to it. It's 4-way limb independence, conversations between your own limbs and with other musicians. It's purely improvisation while keeping time and being interesting and growing painting a picture when you play, and it's like the American classical music. It's really, it's difficult.
Yeah.
And I love the difficult aspect of it. And that's what kind of got me really listening to it a lot. And it's a oral tradition. So you don't learn this kind of music from books. You don't really learn this kind of music you do learn this music from people teaching it, but sitting down and listening to the music, listening to the lineage of the music, that's how you learn this kind of music. And I love that it was a oral tradition. And that's pretty much how I was first interested in it.
I have to admit that jazz hasn't always been my first choice in music.
It hasn't. A lot of people would say that.
But when you performed here at the gallery last year, it's undeniable how talented you, and then you were with 3 other gentlemen. It's so impressive to watch because it's obvious that like the technique is so strong. You're changing time signatures or you are feeding off of each other. And you're listening to each other, and it's all a lot of it's improvised, and so it's each experience is new. Like it's not exactly the same music each time. Kind of how that felt. It was so cool so as a non-traditional jazz lover, watching you play live it was incredible.
Oh, cool. Well, thanks. And the cool thing about that show is, we weren't playing things that swung all the time. We would play a tune that swung, but the kind of music, the kind of more progressive kind of jazz we were playing, is a lot of it was influenced by funk and rock and things like that. So, it doesn't always have to swing. Of course, that's like a fundamental, that's where it all started, but there's so many different kinds of jazz or fusions within jazz. And so that's really fun. But yeah.
What's one thing you teach your students that you never did as a student?
Wow.
Like, is there a lesson you try to teach them, but like you yourself had a hard time following? Or refuse to follow? Or were you a good student?
Well, when I first started coming up in my undergrad playing, the first 2 years, freshman, sophomore year, just in my undergrad, I really, all I wanted to do was play drum set, and I didn't focus as much as I should have on my technical facility. So getting your hands working, doing a lot of snare etudes and chop building things and stuff like that. Snare drum etudes.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, does not sound very sexy at all, but it's, that was young me being like, no, I just want to play drum set, but that's like the meat and potatoes, right? Like that's the stuff that's really important. You have to have your hands together before you can really create on this instrument with like at least 6 instruments that you're playing at the same time. So a lot of my students so far at UW, all my students, I always push that. Like, I know some of this stuff I always say it's not sexy practice, and some people love it. Some people really dive into it, but it's something that, isn't like, the time goes by a lot slower for a lot of people playing that kind of stuff. So that is that it's extremely
you have to do
important.
it. I mean, and I would say like that kind of stuff is similar to like when you learn technique in anything, like for singing, warming up's not fun, or like you learn how to sight read or solfege, or you're just like practicing those muscles. And
totally.
Ugh,
yeah,
but it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Ooh, okay. This might be a tricky one, because you might not want to like toot your own horn, but what skills do you think your students acquire in your classes that help them beyond being a good musician? Like, I'm a firm believer that the arts, when you study the arts, or you're involved in the arts, it's not just the arts that are benefiting, that you're getting other skills that help you in everyday life. And I wonder, like, if there's anything specifically about what you're teaching that are growing in other ways.
Well, I will answer that on 2 different kind of levels, because I kind of have, at UW, I have 2 different focuses with my my jazz history courses, and then my drum set majors, teaching the private lessons. Within the jazz history courses, my biggest thing is that I want my students to be knowledgeable. It's not just a music history, it's American history. Because this music, jazz, where it came from, it's extremely, extremely important for my students to understand the significance of it, and the African American struggle, and how this music came up. It is American history, and I want them to understand the significance of it in America, and how, and even especially today, they need that. They need to be educated in this kind of music, and what it stands for, what it's all about. As far as the drum set side of it, this is actually something that I've always thought about when I was younger, and listening to recordings, and listening to players being like, they have this thing, like these drummers that I listen to that are world-renowned drummers, they have this thing. What is it? Like, yeah, they're good. Yeah, they have great technique. They have great chops. They have a lot of vocabulary on the instrument. But what is this thing? There's something else. And I'm always, and what it is these musicians, they all have their own voice. They all have something where they can sit down and play. And like, I'm at the point, because I've listened to a lot of drummers, having my earbuds in and not putting on a new track and be like, okay, that's Roy Haynes, or oh, that's Bill Stewart, that's Max Roach. That I just know, because they have their own sound. And it's important. And that's something really hard to get. I'm always striving for my students to obtain their own sound.
Yeah.
And to incorporate this thing that I'll just call soul, because that's really the best way that I can describe it. Like when you play, you're not just playing to, you're not just trying to show off. You're not just trying to, you have to be saying something when you're playing.
So you answered this already. I was going to ask if you're still performing, which I knew, but I wanted our viewers to know.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously right now things might be different, but what is the worst gig you ever did?
Okay, so this is the first thing that jumped out at me. Do you know who Doc Severinsen is?
Nope.
So Doc Severinsen was the band leader on Jimmy Carson's late night show. He was the trumpet player, and he led the late night show band. And I remember one gig where I was playing with him, but the first time I played with him, and it was with a symphony orchestra, Doc Severinsen, and then a rhythm section. So like some faculty from University of Illinois, myself, just like non-orchestra instruments. And the conductor, I don't really know who he is. I don't remember his name. He's not going to see this, but
you'd be surprised.
Yeah, you're right. This is actually a huge, this is everyone around the world's watching these. So, but he didn't set up the orchestra or the whole ensemble in a way to like give a prep, right? You can't just go one. It's like, wait, where's the tempo, right? You need to one, right? So you know where the time is, right? And he did not do it at all. And I'm watching for it, I'm waiting for it, and he didn't do it in the rehearsals either. So I was stressing about it. It was a head game at that point. I'm like, what's he gonna do? Because I came in with a very specific thing that I have to play. And he went, and this is in like an auditorium with like a crap ton of people. And he just goes, pow! And it's like, and I just like, one of my sticks dropped. I didn't even play the thing that I was supposed to play. There was like no definition of like, where's the time, because it was, anyways. So the first time I played with Doc Severinsen, and knowing that he heard me, I'm just like, oh my God, this guy, like he's.
When you dropped a stick.
Yeah, I drop sticks all the time, actually. All the time.
How many sticks do you bring with you for a gig?
I at least bring 2 pairs, but then because I always have random sizes of sticks and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But I have to
bring a little goodie bag of sticks.
Oh yeah, it's just a goodie bag of sticks. I mean, that happens a lot. I'll play, and it falls. I keep going, and I got to grab something else. Like that. Honestly, it happens to me a lot. But I like to think it's a good thing, because
I have little like brush sticks that are
brushes. Like, sure, brushes.
Oh, brushes.
Brushes. That's what they're called, actually.
Oh, look at me.
Yeah, you just play them. I just have 1 pair of those at every. But
I went to the public to see if they had questions for you.
Oh.
And they did. So, one question. Would you ever come back to work at the Stockbury High School Marching Band as staff?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely. I've been actually, Steve Jekyll does like an amazing job. And the drum line sounds killer. Awesome. Because I've done stuff with Middleton and Sun Prairie and being at shows, I get to hear Stock and they're killer.
Okay,
but so absolutely.
Vic, you heard it here. He's ready. He's ready.
Yeah, I would love to. That'd be awesome. Of course, but I would never step on any toes like of Steve's, but I would love to.
The question came from Steve, and he was
really
kind of joking about it.
Oh, okay. Well,
I mean, not joking like.
Oh, great. So now I just feel really dumb because he was joking. Thanks, Steve.
Who were your biggest drum set influences when you were younger versus now?
Oh, wow. Younger, like high school and stuff, I would say. Total huge contrast. So not Jimmy. Oh my God, what's his name? I'm blanking on his name now.
Guess you've moved on.
We'll skip that one. Yeah, right. He obviously wasn't that much of an influence. Stuff like people like Lars Ulrich from Metallica, stuff like that.
Okay.
God, who else? I'm really bad with names in general. So like right now, my influences, I could list 1,000 of them, but then I'm having a hard time. The drummer from Slipknot, Joey Jordison, loved him. Loved Joey Jordison.
Any help for you? Because
I know you're not. I know you didn't listen to that at all. You were listening to Wicked and you were listening to Ragtime, and yeah. I know you were.
A Broadway performer, I got you.
Right.
First of all, that music, but then secondly, to name the drummer. I mean, I feel bad about this. I wish I did know more.
Well,
I'm learning. I'm going to learn today. So
you are learning today. Well, so am I.
I know. And so today, who are the influences?
Well, today, the people like my professor from my master's and from my doctorate, the master's at Dana Hall, who's now the director of Jazz Studies at DePaul in Chicago, and Joel Spencer, who's the drum set professor at University of Illinois, who I got my doctorate with. But those were most of the people like I had direct contact. They were huge influences on me. But drummers like who I mentioned before, who I wrote my doctorate on, Roy Haynes, New York-based drummer who has been through so many eras. Roy is 94 years old. He's still playing. Well, not right now, but he was playing 4 to 5 nights a week before pandemic still. Somebody with a very specific sound, and that's what I like.
Have you ever seen him live?
I haven't. I know. And that's my fault because I had opportunities and for some reason that didn't happen, but I have never seen him.
We got to get through this pandemic so then you can
I know.
Take a trip out there. And
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
95.
Yeah. He'll still be swinging his ass off, I'm sure. Well, I don't know if I should have said ass. My bad.
That's okay because now you just said it twice.
Right. Good point.
You want to say it again? Third time? I asked your sister, Lindy, if she had any questions for you. And unfortunately, the questions are too inappropriate.
Of course they were. Like, why do you even ask her?
I don't know.
Oh, that's funny.
So I'll ask you off the air later.
Okay, great.
This is a question. I mean, all of these questions are from me, but This is another question from me.
Sure.
As the public and not as the interviewer.
Okay.
Does it drive you crazy when you work with singers who can't count, which is probably most of them?
You're saying who can't keep time or doesn't Yeah, absolutely. But however, I have been able to work with a lot of great singers who do listen, I'm always trying to be, it's not about me. My goal is to make everybody sound good. That's what I care about when I play. And
so you'll follow.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the plan, but some people, of course, we've dealt with people that aren't good at that stuff, but yeah, it's a huge drag that it's like, open your ears, listen, it's right here, listen. It is frustrating. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it's been frustrating for you having to deal with loud drummers or people who don't, especially when working with a vocalist, you got to follow them.
I only have a few more questions yet today.
Okay, cool.
what has been your most challenging teaching experience that you can talk about? Maybe you've been lucky and not had any, but.
Oh no, I mean
Or maybe it's COVID. I talked to a teacher. I interviewed another teacher earlier, and she's like, "COVID is the most challenging teaching experience."
sure. That would definitely be up there. I mean, I've been lucky enough to, like, when COVID hit, when everything went online, I've been teaching, you know, remote lessons to students all over the United States for years. So that was fine for me. But what makes that difficult is for the student who's never had to deal with a teacher or to deal with doing lessons online. Because you can't see everything, like a lot of times with my students, I want to watch their, what's happening with their fulcrum and with their hands and stuff like that. And you just can't do it. And the sound quality isn't as good unless they have a mic or an awesome mic like this.
Pretty awesome.
So, I mean, that's challenging.
And internet connection. I mean, what if the internet connection is not great? And then there's like,
right.
So you're hearing like,
there's that. But there's also like a deeper level of difficulty with teaching. The cool thing, difficulties that aren't music related, that, my students, I see this, now I'm referring to UW, I see it, not right now, but would see all the time, right? We would meet weekly for lessons. I'd be experiencing them in ensemble atmospheres and things like that. But you don't just become the person who teaches you how to play an instrument better, but you're somebody that they confide in, talking about personal issues that they might have with friends or relationships and things like that. So it's difficult for me when my students are struggling with other things outside of music, and I'm happy that they come to me and talk to me about those things, but that's challenging because, I mean, I have life experiences I can, give them, but I'm not like a licensed psychologist or anything like that. But, but sometimes students, I want them to feel like they can come to me and they do it. And we talk about things, and I'm always wondering if I'm saying the right things. And I want to help them with that because those things tie into playing music very much so.
Well, and music has a way of connecting with people. So it doesn't surprise me that your students open up to you because
sure,
you're connected in a different way, and
yeah,
can be vulnerable
totally.
in a different way.
Absolutely.
Music, and then
absolutely, I totally agree. But yeah, so that's challenging.
What is there any like significant memory that you have like of a really rewarding teaching experience?
Yeah. Well, the best thing is always hearing your students get better, right? I mean, hearing them grow as musicians, that's always huge. One, that really pops out right now. I mean, I've always been proud of all my students, but two of them who were seniors at UW, who just recently graduated, who got accepted into graduate programs, and both of them with scholarships and things like that, because I strongly believe in getting terminal degrees and going on to higher education past undergrad if you can. That I was like, oh, awesome. I'm so proud of you. Like, I love that they take it seriously because it's like, that's what I did, like, if my dad was, was a big hunter, and like the fact that I enjoyed hunting, I know that he was like, yeah, my son loves hunting like me. You know what I mean? Like that's, so that was really, that sticks out because it was the most recent thing, but yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I could ask a million more questions, but we're out of time today.
Cool. Well, thank you.
If anyone has questions, they surely can write them in the comments.
Yeah. Totally.
And we'll get those burning questions answered.
Awesome. Well, thanks for doing this. This is fun.
Thanks for chatting with me.
Absolutely.
Hope to see you soon.
Hopefully, I'm sure I will.
Yeah. Take care.
Cheers.